Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 071 of the WA Running Podcast as we record on a very hot Monday night, the 24th of March 2025. In this week's episode, we cover results from the short stuff, which includes the Strive Program C in the 1500 metres, and then the bloody long stuff, Herdy's Frontyard Ultra, which started on Friday night. We find out who won the Bix Gels as we took bets from last week's episode. In this week's interview, we chat to local legend in the WA running community, Rochelle Di Masi, head coach of PR Run Coach. We have a Simon Says segment as we talk whispers in the WA running community before recapping our weapons of warp. Across my screen is someone who didn't win the 2019 Masters Athletics Track Championships back in 2019. Chris the Metronome Shaw, how are you, mate?
I'm well. I'm glad that's been resolved. I was worried that perhaps I'd forgotten I'd done something, mate. But it turns out it was Chris Lark that was the winner of the 2019 Masters Games. But wrong Chris.
Yeah, there's bloody too many Chris's in the bloody WA running community. It's it's shocking. But anyway, how was your week this week?
Yeah, good, mate. It was like a nice cool week last week. So it was felt like the seasons were changing, and now we're right back where we were probably 3 weeks ago. But actually did my biggest mileage week ever last week.
Shit.
Ended up on 138 Ks for the week, and I kind of about halfway through the week I was like, I'm going to try and have a nudge at 140, and got to 138.9 on Sunday afternoon, and I thought, could I go and take one of the kids for a bike ride again? But no, I'm not that petty, so I left it where it was. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So biggest. Oh, I thought you've done 140 Ks last year in the Bunbury.
No. I think I've done 137 possibly, but I've never gone over 140. But it's interesting. The legs reasonably fresh today after yesterday. So yesterday they were quite tired, but today I did my long run Saturday this week. So legs feeling good today. But I guess in terms of a key session this week, there's probably a couple of things. One of them is my hill repeats that I do at Wireless Hill. So I do like a 10 by 60 second with a 90 second recovery, and then a 10 by 30 second with a 60 second recovery. So it just gives me time to get down to the hill, bottom of the hill. And so that's my kind of thing I do every 2 weeks, especially in the early parts of my training phases, like to kind of build a bit of strength. But the other key run I did this week was ran with Dave Perich, our Bunbury Lighthouse member and good friend. So Dave was working on his final peak session for his marathon build on Saturday, and we went down to Munga and did a Dean Menzies and set up the tables and had the drinks out and did a whole. I actually lost how many laps we'd done. I lost count, but we were kind of did a 3K warm up and then straight into kind of what David was aiming for, which was 28 kilometres at marathon pace, which sounded like a spicy workout. And it did turn out to be quite difficult. So I think we ended up capping it at about 22 Ks at marathon pace. I think we ended up with 25 Ks. So.
And were you able to pace that accurately at 4:15 pace, or were you going a little bit too hot?
Well, the game plan was to start off at 4:15s for 5 kilometres and then do about 15 Ks at about 4:12s.
Okay.
But the first 3 Ks popped out at 4:10. So I think we kind of just hovered around 4:12s for a lot of the run. There were a couple of 4:08s in there. There was some weird GPS stuff going on that freeway side of Munga, as it always does. And so I think I had 2 or 3 of my kilometres coming out of that side of the lake were like 3:58s, and I was like, that can't be right. I mean, there must be something going on. But the other guys kind of averaged out. And I think Dave had a 5K splits of kind of 4:13, 4:11, 4:10, and then maybe 4:06 for his last, so that it was getting progressively quicker and harder. So we probably cooked him in the last 5K there, but we being Matt and I. But I think all in all, a very solid workout for him, and I'm sure he's happy to be at the end of his build. How about you, mate? What did you have going on this week?
So I had another 100 Ks in the bank, which is pretty happy with that. pretty busy week with life and stuff, and work continues to be busy. So happy to get that done. Following on from the pacing gig at Canning River, turns out Tina was expecting me to run a marathon, so I might have disappointed her for not doing one last Sunday. But we did a reshake of the program because she was expecting me to do the full marathon and therefore be a lighter week this week. So we switched things up a little bit. So she added the Thursday workout session, which we normally do anyway. So that was the 2 by 5 minutes, 2 by 3 minutes, and 5 by 1 minutes with 1 minute jog recovery in between. So that's very unconventional of Tina to put something like that in. But yeah, that was actually a really good session, actually, because I usually rely on you guys to pull me along on a Thursday, but there was no Mats Morelli. He was a little bit unwell this week, and you were doing something else. So yeah, so to do that on my own was pretty good, and I was pretty happy with the paces that I was able to hit. So Wednesday was a 70-minute run that I think I went out a little bit too hot and quick because that felt really good. So I think I was averaging 4:30s overall, and thought I'd live to regret that on Thursday. But Thursday morning was a great run. And then the Saturday I had the start of one of these really long tempo sessions. So I had 3 by 18 minutes. Just did that down the road on my Alnatour road, which is my usual VO Spew stretch of road. They've done some road works and there's some dual carriageways done up and it's complete. But on the other side of the road, there's a fresh stretch of cycling path. So it's a good 3K stretch of new path. So I kind of use that as my tempo reps and baptized it with some more vomit. So I don't usually vomit on a tempo sesh, but because it was new, I had to baptize it with a bit of my vomit on Saturday. But that was a tough run, but happy to come out of Thursday and Saturday, which was really good. Yeah, Saturday night I had my 10-year wedding anniversary shindig. So happy to make it to 10 years. I think 10 years was under threat when we started this podcast, but glad to make it. Glad to have some of you boys come along as well. We had a nice, running theme for the wedding, which was very much a lot of pasta, a lot of pizza.
A big Italian meal,
big Italian meal. That's how I like to do it. And then we topped it off with some ice cream at the end. So just for you. So hope you guys had a nice feed, and I guess for you guys having a nice feed post that long session Saturday morning. I think for some of the others, a good carb load for their respective Sunday long runs the next day. So yeah, all in all, a very good week. How'd you find Saturday night? You enjoyed yourself?
Yeah, we had a great time. Had the whole family there, and the kids had a ball. They were picking grapes off the vines. I'm sure much to the disappointment of the staff there. But it was great, mate. Thank you for having us, and it was good to chat to a few of the crew and relax a little and just have a beer and hear some of your story with Linda. And you had a quiz going where I think we had 10 questions, and I think pretty sure our table got 1 or 2 out of 10 right. So it goes to show how much men's really talk to each other about their histories. But
but in saying that, there was a lot of running references.
That was good.
There was talk about whether or not we would have the Bix stall at the next wedding anniversary. So I'll be in touch with Vlad around getting some Bix electrolytes down the end of the table. And there was a toilet story or two. So, it wouldn't be the WA running podcast if there wasn't a toilet story. So, it was a good night. I was very tired Saturday night. Didn't get to bed till very late. And turns out the reason why I did my long run down Guildford Maylands Way was turns out we had taken something from Pasture in the Valleys that they needed back. So I had to wake up at 5. Well, I was going to wake up at 5 anyway to do the long run, but I had to drive all the way back to Pasture in the Valley, drop off the gear, and decided that I'd just drive down to Maylands and start my long run there. So it was nice. It was better there than do my usual Lake Joondalup. But that was good in the end.
Yeah, and you saw a few familiar faces on your run on Saturday morning, I take it?
Yeah, so saw Nick John and a couple of avid listeners, so it was good to see them. I normally don't get to see many familiar faces in Lake Joondalup. I usually get my runs done pretty early there, so no one's really around. But yeah, no, it was good to do sort of that Matagarup loop and Borloo Bridge loop. So yeah, to cap off the week. So yeah, 104 days to Gold Coast, 55 days to Joondalup. I can't remember if I mentioned whether or not I was doing Joondalup. But yeah, no, I'm doing Joondalup half. I actually don't know if Tina knows that. Tina, I'm doing Joondalup half. So, and I don't know what time I'd be going for. I mean, I'd love to PB, but we'll see in the next couple of weeks and see how that goes.
Yeah, surely a PB on the cards. Should we jump into some results?
Yeah, let's get into it. So we had Strive Program C on Friday night.
Yeah, we had Strive Program C. There's a 1,500 metres on there. In the women's race, we had Angie Ross taking the win in 4 minutes 30.91, followed by Lucy McNamara in a time of 4:35.19, which was a PB for her. So congratulations, Lucy. And Amy Buckingham taking out third with 4 minutes 35.57, which is a season's best. The men's race was won by Luca De Toro in a time of 3 minutes 50 seconds, 0.98, followed by Jonah Hanakiri in 3:51.42, which was a PB for Jonah. So congratulations, Jonah. And then Oscar Clements coming third with 3 minutes 54.48. So yeah, some pretty rapid times there. There's a few familiar names I saw on the sheet, but look, there's a few that we mention every week, and sometimes you just have to get on the podium to get a mention. So maybe next time, guys. But how about Herdys? That was the big one this weekend, mate. There was a lot of people down there, a lot of people participating, but a lot of people going to check it out. Perhaps you can run us through how that went.
Yeah, look, I'm glad that it's over, because imagine if you were still going on a Monday and hitting 40 degrees. So we did eventually have a winner in Tim Moffat from New South Wales. I think getting the job done, I'm going to say in 38 yards. We haven't got the official results yet, but we had Darren Chandler with the assist, being out there for 37 hours. So Strava clocked him at 266 Ks, which is phenomenal considering that it was quite warm on that Saturday. So great work for those two guys. In the women's, we had Tammy Lovett getting 25 laps done, with Jamie coming second with 22 yards, and then Genevieve and Phoebe coming joint third with 21 yards. I guess more importantly, who won the Bix bet? So I guess I was hoping that Big Kev and Julie Gibson would do very well. So Big Kev and Julie both did 19 yards, so that took me to 38 yards in total. And I think with yourself, you had Kate Seaton. So Kate Seaton did 13 yards, which gave me a bit of confidence coming into it. And then bloody Dane Sproxton with his Peter Pan sprinkles got 25 yards done. But in saying that, with the 25 yards and the 13 of Kate's, you also end up with 38 yards. So who would have thought? Tied in the mix bet. So any thoughts from Herdys?
Well, in terms of some of the names we picked out to review, I think Simon Polly was probably not the one. I think Simon was out on a beer. I think we got a message from someone to say that Simon was out drinking beers the day before or the night.
I think it was Brian Bourke that messaged us and said that Simon was planning to drink a beer per yard.
That's right, yeah.
Which explains why he's only done 4.
Yeah, because I did see some commentary around someone else that was running with Simon saying that, potentially it's not the way to go about it. So, especially in the heat. So, yeah, probably in hindsight, probably should have done a little bit more research on the people that I'd chosen. But it was wonderful to see Dane really fulfill his potential and go for 25 yards. I mean, we knew that he was going to go far because he'd done those park runs, only a few months ago. And by all accounts, you were trolling him on his Strava, and his mum's still making him go to school today. So there's no rest for the wicked.
No. Unfortunate for Dane, had to rock up to school and participate in that plan this week. So all the best for Dane. Wonder what was harder, doing the Herdys or having to bloody study and do exams this week. So
Yeah.
But no, congratulations, Dane. That's phenomenal. I don't think I could do that many yards. I don't think I have the mental mindset to do that sort of shit. I know last week you talked about potentially doing 24. I guess after seeing some of these results, are you still confident that you could do 24 yards?
I'm going to be one of those people that says I can do something but not actually do it. So
So I suppose, because I saw Sean posting earlier today that next year's event is already announced, with Herdys 2026 scheduled for Friday the 13th of March. It's not going to fall on my wedding anniversary, so potentially I could do it. But
interesting. But someone else might be, right?
Yeah. Well, we'll find out in Simon Says in the segment later today. I mean, pretty successful event. It seems like it attracts huge numbers. I think there was over 500 starters on Friday, which is absolutely phenomenal. So I know we talk about potentially doing track next summer. How about we do a bit of track and a good lead in to Herdys? What do you say?
No.
Maybe one or the other.
Yeah, I think it's nothing to do with the timing, but the 13th of March sits between my birthday and Henry's birthday, and the reality of actually getting that done next year, particularly with the the intention of trying to maybe pull back on the marathons next year. Going out and doing a backyard ultra is probably not on the cards.
You're just asking for a divorce at that point.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
definitely. All right, let's move on to our interview, Chris.
Yeah, so really fortunate to have been able to sit down with Rochelle on Friday and talk through her running career to date. Some really significant highs, but also a few struggles that she's had with chronic fatigue, and even goes into her struggles with anxiety post her run at London Marathon last year. So here is our interview with Rochelle.
All right, today I am privileged to be sitting across the screen from our guest. Her name's synonymous with elite marathon running in our state, having represented Australia in the marathon at the 2019 Athletics World Championships in Doha. A personal best of 2:34.45 at Shizuoka earlier that year, a run which took first place but also placed her in the top 30 all-time Australian women at that moment in time. She's now coaching other athletes through her business at PR Run and training the house down the past couple of years post-baby toward some lofty goals to come, no doubt. Rochelle Di Masi, welcome to the WA Running Podcast.
Thank you for having me. It was a good intro.
I'm glad you like it. You've got some fantastic credentials, so we're very grateful for your time. First of all, congratulations on the podium finish last week at Darlington. By all accounts, a training run for you, but did Matt buy the coffees afterwards?
He did. Yes. I did hear that last episode, and yes, Matt did drive through the Macca's drive-through on the way home.
Fantastic. Very good. Rightly so. Look, let's start where it all began for you. Were you always a runner? And I guess what was your pathway to the marathon?
So I did the Little Athletics system from start to finish. I was also a big tennis player and went to high school on a tennis scholarship. So athletics was always sort of like secondary to that. But when I left high school, I didn't know what I wanted out of life, didn't even know what sort of job I wanted to do. So just continued to run and found myself under the guidance of John Gilmore, who became a very good friend of mine until, he sadly passed away. He got me into the half marathon distance, ran my first half marathon, not knowing like what really I was to expect or what I was doing. There was no such thing as gels. I had a Timex watch, just completely winged it. I loved everything about it, like the challenge, the pain, the exhaustion, just enjoyed being out there with the opportunity to run. And then decided one day, let's try a marathon. And that wasn't until I was a little bit older. I was in my late 20s and kind of went from there.
Yeah, very good. So Simon has shared an anecdote with me that, you were actually one of his heroes in the local running scene when he started training for his first marathon. Do you have any heroes that you look up to?
Not a whole lot of like local runners, more so my coach that I had, John Gilmore. He had been through a lot in his life, so a prisoner of war, running partially blind, an avid masters runner, but he taught me a lot, not just about running. He also taught me how to hold myself around that as well. So being humble, making sure you're always, a good sportsman, standing at the finish line to wait for the second and third opponent to come through and things like that. So I looked up to him more so than any other female athlete at the time. But if you were to say now, yeah, I'm a really big fan of Lisa Waitmans.
I have heard you mention her name on a number of occasions, whether it's been through conversations that we've had. What is it about Lisa that that really strikes you?
She's a really strong woman, not just for her running, but how she holds herself day to day and the way that she respects everybody that she comes across.
Yeah, for sure. A couple of fantastic role models there, definitely. So perhaps you could take us through your first marathon experience. I think it was Melbourne 2013. Is that correct?
Yeah, wow, that was a long time ago. I don't remember much about my first marathon. I think I was so fixated on my pace when I was having gels. I don't really remember too much about Melbourne. I also don't really remember too much about Tokyo as well. I just ran and tried to follow what I'd been told to do. I was like, right, this is the pace. Am I on it? I'm 2 seconds off, speed up or slow down, or it's time for a drink, it's time for a gel. Wanting to do the very best that I could do. And I put a lot of pressure on myself to get that job done. So the surroundings around me kind of were a blur.
Yeah, that's probably a common experience for many in the marathon when you're so focused on one thing and that you miss everything else around you. Sometimes, especially, you go to a marathon major and it's an incredible atmosphere, but you forget everything that happened, it's wild. Now, Shizuoka was obviously an incredible run and probably shocked a few people at the time, including yourself. Could you run us through like that race where you progressed from, say, Melbourne to Shizuoka over that 6 years and like what was your running like at the time and what did running mean to you at that point in your running career?
Yeah, running's always been important to me, more so for my mental health. I struggle a lot with that day to day. So for me, like I've always run for that side of things. I'm quite a stubborn person, so always wanting to do my very best for myself, not necessarily for anybody else. But that put me in a spot for about 5 years where I didn't see too much progress. I think what changed was I started to really knuckle down with my training and making sure that I did all the 1%ers. So I started working with a nutritionist and a physio, and I started going to the chiro, and I started doing all these little extra things that kind of led to that one big outcome. And so then from Shizuoka, every time I did something after that, I made sure that those 1%ers were there as well. Also, I ran in the very first pair of carbon fiber shoes that came to, came into production, which was the Nike 4%. It was a red pair of carbon fiber shoes. Had never worn them. Had always run in Saucony Kinvaras, which were this beefy cushion shoe beforehand. So I think that also played a bit of a role in the success that I had. But I just felt amazing. I did go into the run very tired. But yeah, I wouldn't have changed anything.
Yeah, no, incredible. You actually answered my next question, which was what the shoes were. So yeah, obviously a brand new experience there in a pretty significant race. I guess we have to touch on then the world champs that followed at Doha. You ran a 3:05 in really horrific conditions for marathon running, I think. And placed 35th in that race, in a race which nearly 50% of the field DNF'd. Like for listener context, the current world record holder, Ruth Chepengedich, won that race in a 2:32. What was that experience like in those conditions? And also being on the world stage?
For me, that was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. But at the same time, it was the most special experience I could have had and the best experience that I've had with my running. It was just carnage. We did a whole pre-cooling exercise beforehand. We were sitting in pretty much like ice tents. We had ice vests. We were eating ice slushies, everything that you could do. But by the time we had walked to the start line, I think that had completely worn off. It was very, very hot. And of course, very nervous and feeling just like amazed by the scenario that I'd put myself in being at the World Championships. The gun went off and I ran as if, I would run any other race. I was sticking to my plan, which thinking back was probably a little bit too hot for the conditions that I was running in. I was a bit optimistic with what it was that I could achieve. And I think everybody within that race was the same. I saw people fainting. I saw murder scenes in the Portaloos. I saw, people being stretchered off, put in ambulances, which none of that was televised. I remember running and just seeing this girl completely face plant into like a garden bed. It was hard, and I don't remember the last lap at all. All I remember on the sidelines for the last 6Ks was my now husband Matt saying, "Lift your head." I was completely gone, and if I had to have run another sort of 200-300 meters, I think I would have been one of those in a stretcher myself.
Yeah, wow. No, truly like incredible achievement, something you should be massively proud of for having completed that race and pushed yourself through. I mean, I've seen photos of you running with a sponge like stuffed down your top. So you must have been pretty hot.
Yeah, it was incredibly hot. And I'm one of those people that will always finish what I start. So I did everything that I could do to cross that finish line. And I'm pretty sure from memory, I burst into tears crossing the finish line. And I'm not a super emotional person when it comes to things like that. And it was just a natural reaction that I had to the situation I was in.
No, true. I mean, I'm completely emotionally, physically exhausted, no doubt. Like COVID happened not long after all of this. And as someone myself, wasn't taking running very seriously at the time, I must have this been hugely frustrating for someone who's just achieved some incredible things. Did this change your relationship with running at all?
It didn't change my relationship with running. I was disappointed. I was supposed to go to Poland to run in the World Half Marathon Championships, and that probably frustrated me a lot because I had just started my journey in sort of the elite field. But COVID still allowed us to run within a radius of, I can't remember, like 5 kilometers from our house. We had time frames. And like everybody else, he just dealt with it because that was the cards that everyone was dealt. It's like going into a race, it could be a thunderstorm, but we're all running in the same conditions. So just had to do what we did.
Yeah, for sure. And then I guess your son Dean was born in 2022. Like, what challenges did parenthood bring, and particularly Matt working away, some of the time as well?
Yeah, so Dean was born like the tail end of COVID. So that was an experience within itself, being in a hospital with very minimal staff and people around and not having visitors, etc. But I wouldn't have had it any other way. And then, starting my running journey, I was very lucky to have had a treadmill purchased for me by my parents. They know how much I love running and what it means to me. So, jumped on my treadmill in the garage when I could. Didn't buy a running pram because for me, running is like my time and it's my sport. And I didn't need to bring stress with me. But it's challenging. Matt works away one week and he's home the next. So, I heavily rely on my treadmill and running when Dean wants to play the game. I did get in a nice sneaky 30 minutes last night whilst he was eating his dinner watching TV. Did come back inside to a naked child. God knows what he got up to. But, I have a babysitter and she watches Dean sometimes for me, and I rely on the creche at the gym.
Yeah, very good. Very good. I mean, yeah, it seems like a common thread that a lot of mothers who push the treadmill running, I think Nari is someone that comes to mind locally, and yeah, really quite admirable. Now, chronic fatigue syndrome, I think something that you suffered through in the past. I'm not exactly sure on the timing of that. Like, that's obviously a debilitating thing to go through for someone as active as yourself. How did you work through this? And I guess, how did you get back to a place where running was the norm again?
Yeah, so after the World Championships, that's kind of when I started to notice the symptoms of the chronic fatigue. After that particular race, I was heavily dehydrated and my organs were very dehydrated to the point where my eyeballs were yellow. So I think, Doha definitely played a big role in my chronic fatigue journey. Dealing with it is hard because you're not allowed to do anything for a long period of time. It's like, I'm very lucky I've never had an injury that has prevented me from running, but chronic fatigue is almost like a never-ending injury, and you just have to manage it, and I still manage it to today. It's just about listening to your body, and just doing what you can when you can. So I do take a lot more of a relaxed approach about my running now than I used to. If I need a rest day, like I'll have it knowing that tomorrow is going to be a lot better and I'm going to feel fresher. Where in the past I would do every single run and just completely run myself down into a hole, to the point where, I'd wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning, and then by 11 o'clock I was asleep on the couch and I hadn't even realized that I'd fallen asleep. Majority of the journey happened through COVID, and I did lose a job through COVID as well, so that probably didn't help the chronic fatigue situation, just because I was at home just doing nothing. So running was all I could do, and that's what I wanted to do, and it just drilled me into a hole. But now, like, I continue to monitor it. I'm on medication for it, and the journey just never really ends, which is horrible, but I maintain my life.
Yeah, well, I mean, it seems like you have been, over at least the last couple of years that I've been following you have been building back up, and very, very consistently. I think ahead of London last year, like everybody was kind of thinking, oh, Rochelle's back, Rochelle's going to run a fantastic race at London. And, you obviously took a fall in that race and managed to finish it, but I'm sure that was hugely disappointing for you. Perhaps you could take us through that experience and how you've kind of come to terms with that after the race.
Yeah. For me, London was like my comeback marathon. I did everything that I could right leading into it. And then, unfortunately at 10Ks in, was turning a corner and another runner and I collided and got tripped over and trampled on, which was not a nice experience. I got up and, shuffled to the side, cried. Was the first time I actually ran with my phone because I was overseas by myself. I'm glad that I took my phone with me because I was able to then call Matt and say, what had happened. And he passed the message along to those who needed to know at the time. But it was heartbreaking. And being somebody who already suffers from a lot of anxiety, that just made it a million times worse. And I didn't know what I wanted to do with my running after that. But throughout the time of London Marathon, like, my goal was to finish. So that's what I did. Like, I never give up. It doesn't matter, like, how good the race is or how bad the race is. The finish line is always the goal. So that was in my mind. I also had brought all the gear at the expo, so couldn't wear it unless I'd finished.
Yeah.
But yeah, completely heartbroken. I always try to make light of a horrible situation, so that was a thought running through my head when I was out there walking the streets of London, with blood dripping down my knees and arms, and yeah. But it was the journey afterwards probably that's been the hardest. Coming to terms with like not achieving the goal, knowing there was a lot of pressure from everybody back home wanting to see how I would run. Being somebody who's gone to the World Championships just naturally puts a lot of pressure on you, because everyone then expects you to be at your A game all the time, and that's just not possible. But it does create a lot of pressure. So yeah, I don't know how to really answer it. It was just heartbreaking.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, the pressure is, it must be immense. Something that, Simon and I talk about the pressure that we feel talking on this podcast about our goals, and then having to go out and run them. But someone like yourself, who's not just got like a community like that we have, but you've actually got a broader kind of fan base, must be really hard. Do you think that things like Strava play into this? I mean, it seems like there's a lot of people who are new to running, and they come in, they see people running this many Ks a week or this fast on their easy runs. And so that kind of perpetuates kind of a bit of a toxic environment where people, push themselves probably beyond what they're capable of doing. Do you think that what are your thoughts on Strava and the social media side of things?
I think Strava is a very useful tool when used in the right ways. So if you're using it to look at your personal growth, that's fantastic. But once you start going deeper and really looking into each and every other runner's profiles, I think that's when it becomes quite a scary scenario. Especially if you are a new runner, looking at somebody's times, this person's running this fast and they've done this many Ks this week. Why can't I do that? Everybody's running journey is very individual. And I think a lot of us always want to have success now. And if we don't have success now, then it just, it spirals into a negative sort of outcome. So Strava, yes, is good when used in the right way. But I think, sometimes it's good to turn it off. I did turn it off for a period of time myself. I think leading into London and after London, I had it switched off just because it was my first race back and I wanted it to be for me, not for anybody else. But then in saying that, it's great. So many people are out running and so many people want to start a running journey. It's just making sure that they do it in the right way.
For sure. Very well said. So what tools do you use if you are feeling some internal pressure in a race such as London, even if it is for yourself? Are there mantras that you use to kind of coach yourself through the kind of the headspace that you're in before a race?
I'm very blasé about my races going into them. I don't look at course maps and I don't look at who I'm competing against. I just go there knowing that it's for myself. It's when things go wrong that I start to manifest the external world. So like London, I fell over, got trampled on, and then my natural reaction was to think about all the people that were following me and then wondering what on earth is going on, and then thinking about the gossip that comes with running a bad race and what's happened along the way, like the amount of people that messaged me asking if I was injured or if I was sick. It's just that's when it starts to manifest and to fall down. But a lot of the time I go into things not wanting to know a whole lot and just get out there and enjoy the opportunity to be running, and regardless of the race, like whether it's running the bridges or running HBF or London or Shizuoka, just enjoying the opportunity to be out and about.
No, nice perspective. I think there's a few. I think the first time I met you actually was just we happened to be running the same event at the marathon club, and you were running around the pace that I wanted to run, just on a, I guess you were running a steady run or something, and so I latched onto you, and we had a good chat, and then that happened again maybe a few months later with Simon and I out at Point Walter, and then of all the things I was running Sydney, and there's this big goal race for me, and then I was kind of going down Anzac Parade, and I was like, that's Rochelle. Like, I'm pretty sure that's Rochelle. So I run next to you, and then I saw you were there, and it just kind of seeing that you were there and you were just having a good time running your own race and just doing your thing kind of relaxed me, by seeing someone familiar. You always seem to bring calm to my running whenever I bump into you on the road.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, Sydney was a bit of fun. Had lots of clients over there running and didn't want to miss out. Had some FOMO, so don't recommend running a marathon if you haven't trained for it. But yeah, no, it was good. Ran with some friends, had a chat. It was nice to see you. I do remember the point that you ran past and you were like, oh, Rochelle. So yeah, no, and it's nice that you feel the calmness around me.
Yeah, no, that's good. So I guess let's jump into PR Run. Like, when did you start coaching, and like how did PR Run come about?
I started coaching a very, very long time ago. I did my level 1 accreditation, I think 2000 and maybe 13. And then I was granted a women's in coaching grant, and I used that to do my level 2 recreational certificate. So I've coached for a long time. I haven't always advertised it, but I've had a lot of people along the way that I've helped and loved seeing their success. I guess PR Run started HBF last year after I left another company that I was working under. And PR is personal record. And the reason for that is because everybody's run is so individual and everybody should be out there running for themselves. So a lot of people think PR means pocket rocket, which is a nickname I had years and years ago. But no, it means personal record, just putting it out there now. And yeah, I mean, being in the running scene for a very long time, I've seen really toxic cultures around groups, in general, different states around Australia. And I just wanted to create a community that it I wanted to create a community where everybody was welcome, and it didn't matter if you're a 6-hour marathon runner or a 3-hour marathon runner, or you're a 7-minute kilometre pace runner or a 3-minute kilometre pace runner. Everybody can come together and just talk about running and be there enjoying what it is that they want to do and achieve. So one of the big things that I do at PR Run is every session that we have it's not distance-based, it's timed-based. And so everybody starts and finishes at the same time. So nobody is left out alone. There's nothing worse than being out running and thinking, oh, God, everyone's hanging around waiting for me. So by making my sessions time-based has created a really positive environment. And, yeah, I just enjoy learning about people and their journeys. And, gosh, I've got 2 clients that have just gone to Antarctica, another one that was off in South Africa running. Like, it's crazy. And they inspire me to want to do better as well.
Yeah, awesome. It does seem like you have like a really broad range of athletes, in terms of the surfaces they're running on and their abilities. Based on what I've seen firsthand in your group, I think you invited me along to a long run that you held last year, and you guys seem to be building a really great atmosphere with your team. And I guess that obviously cultivating that really good culture is important to you. I noticed the other day that on Instagram that you've actually got a new coach on board. Perhaps you can tell us about Stevie and what she brings to the squad.
Yeah, so really random way of meeting Stevie. She started following me on Instagram, and her handle was becoming a running coach. So that grabbed my attention, clicked on her, looked through her profile, followed her back, and just reached out and said, hey, thanks for following me. I can see that, you're wanting to learn how to coach athletes. Let's have a chat. And we got on so well, and her values aligned so well with mine. So she lives down in Denmark. down south. I've mentioned it a few times and people are like, oh, Denmark, the country. I'm like, no, down south, people. She's in Australia. Yeah, she's a mum as well. She's got 2 children. She's a single mum, so, you know, life is tough. She knows what it's like 1 week having kids, 1 week not having kids. But she wants to create a culture within running that is positive herself. So that was the big tick for me when she did mention that. I was like, perfect. This is exactly what I need. So she's going to be our women's only coach in the beginning. I'm going to teach her the ropes. She's been running for a long time, but she's had her hurdles along the way as well. She's had tumours and had to heal from that, and then, you know, children and stress fractures. So I think she'll be a really good role model for any age group of woman that wants to come on board with us, and just being able to share her own knowledge and her own paths.
Yeah, awesome. That sounds great. I guess if there's anyone out there who's considering a coach, what would you say is the most beneficial? What are the benefits of having an experienced coach such as yourself or Stevie or Matt?
Yeah, or Matt, yes. It's important to have a coach, basically, like, to hold you accountable. Sorry, I was just laughing because you were laughing because I said Matt. So coaches are great because they hold you accountable. Over my years, I've seen a lot of people sign up for an event and then 10 weeks out get a coach. But I think coaches are important to get now before you even think about the 12-week build up, because you need to be able to get an understanding of the coach. The coach needs to get an understanding of their client and the way that they can structure the program around their lifestyle. It's not just about getting a program and fitting it in to what you're already doing. It's building a program that's going to align with your values, your work life, your kids, everything. So it's starting now rather than later, so that you can get consistency and build a base. And it just minimizes the risk of injury. So coaches are really great for that. And they also are really great for holding you accountable. So if I didn't have a coach myself, I'd find it hard to do what I needed to do when I needed to do it. And also, you might go for a run and think, 60 minutes today, maybe I'll just make it 40. So
yeah, for sure. Really important. And what I've noticed through training around like other groups or watching Simon train in his group is that the ability to have that group atmosphere does enable it. You push each other and you know, there's a level of encouragement, but there's also that sometimes a little bit of competitiveness, which is good to have as long as it's friendly, and you can push each other to better yourselves, for sure.
Yeah, a group environment definitely helps, and that's what I love about my Saturday sessions. Like, everyone's out there enjoying the opportunity to be training with a group, and yeah, there's always going to be somebody in front of you and there's always going to be somebody behind you, but that's what pushes us, right? So yeah, it's a win-win situation for everybody.
So you briefly mentioned just a moment ago that you do have a coach. Perhaps you could share with us who that is and how that's going.
Yeah, so I've had several coaches in the past, and communication was always something that was lacking for me around those coaches. And I heard about Matt Smith and how well he communicates with his athletes. So I've jumped on board with Double under the guidance of Matt Smith. And yeah, I mean, at first I was like, oh, he's setting me paces that I think I can run quicker, but he's been bang on with absolutely everything. He communicates with me before a session. He communicates with me after a session. And that's the biggest thing for me, is communication and wanting to know why I'm doing something, and if I could have done something better.
Yeah, nice. Well, that's good to hear. So what's next for you, Rochelle? Like, is there anything coming up this year on the calendar that you're targeting?
Yeah, so went to Sydney last year and didn't train for the marathon. So I'm going back to Sydney this year, and I am going to train for the marathon because I really enjoyed the course. And despite not training for it, I ran what I thought was a reasonable time. So I'd really like to give Sydney a big sort of nudge. But I'm also doing Gold Coast as well. I'm heavily involved with sort of some of the 2NU sunglass stuff. And as a sponsored athlete, I'm just going to go over there and have a bit of a fun time.
Yeah, I mean, well, let's touch on the 2NU stuff then. I mean, how did that come about? It's obviously been a big push with them, 2NU being like a major sponsor of the Gold Coast Marathon last year and again this year. Yeah, how did that partnership come about?
It was super random. They reached out to Matt on Instagram and wanted to send him a pair of sunglasses, like a lot of brands do, trying to get exposure in the Australian market. So they're a brand that's really big in Hong Kong, and their marketing strategies are very different to ours. So they have come over to Australia and they're wanting to learn, how we do things and how to get into our market. But yeah, it was just super random. Matt being Matt started chatting to the guy on the other end of Instagram, and next thing we're building ambassador programs and affiliate programs, and then we're working on like sponsorships, and they helped send me to London, which was amazing. But yeah, like we do a lot of the back end stuff. So currently at the moment, just looking at other avenues of selling product in bricks and mortar stores. So that's something exciting to look out for.
Definitely. I think Simon might be one of your ambassadors. So I've seen him flying around the roads with a couple of pairs of sunnies. So he's certainly looking very good while he's doing it. Look, Rochelle, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Like an incredible journey, you've been on, and like as I said, Simon and I look up to you massively, and we're both looking forward to seeing how Gold Coast and how Sydney goes for this year. We understand PR Run has a couple of free interval sessions coming up ahead of HBF. Perhaps you could give us, the listeners, some details on that and where they can find you.
Yeah, I just want to make running accessible for everybody. So between now and HBF, every Saturday morning I'm holding free run interval sessions, which are all timed based and are designed for all three events, which are going to be at HBF, so the 3K, 12K and half marathon. They're located at the Burswood Outdoor Movies sort of area. Everyone's familiar with where like Masters Athletics starts from sometimes. So that sort of location there, 8 o'clock, we kick off with a warm up, and then we do some dynamic stretching and drills as a group. And then we do our little session, which is generally no more than sort of like 20 to 25 minutes. And like I said, designed for any level of runner. And then we do a cool down, and coffee is probably the longest part of the day or the session. But yeah, we get a group, generally about 8 to 10 runners at the moment, but bring your friends, come along, enjoy running, enjoy the sunshine, and just get to know other people that are like-minded as well. And then Sundays as well, we also have every fortnight we're trying to do a trail run from the Peachy Road car park up at Swanview. So yeah, you can follow us on Instagram and Strava and find out more.
Yeah, love to see it. Thank you again. Thank you so much for your time today, Rochelle, and thank you for joining us on the WA Running Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
Thank you so much, Rochelle, for sharing your wisdom, but also your being so vulnerable and talking through some of those experiences that you've had over the last years post the 2019 World Champs. So yeah, we're really lucky to have had Rochelle talk through that with us. And yeah, and I mean, she's got some races coming up this year, which, she's training well for, and sounds like Matt Smith is taking care of her in terms of her training. So I'm really excited to see what Rochelle can do at Gold Coast and Sydney this year.
Beautiful. All right, let's move into upcoming events. So like we said earlier, we've got Strive Program D, which I think is the last of the Strive events for this season. So that's on this coming Friday, 28th of March. Also this upcoming weekend is the Xterra Asia Pacific Championship, which is in the weekend of the 27th to the 30th of March. I think from a previous episode, Kate Baker's partner is heading down there, and which might mean that Kate might still sneak into an event. But I did notice this morning that she might be on the elliptical, which tells me that she might have hurt herself. So we'll see if she ends up doing a trail half marathon there. On Saturday, we've got the Collie Trail Fest. I think that must be the Perth Trail Series kickstarting their winter series. So we've got the Collie Trail Fest there. We've got the Swan River Half, which is on Saturday, the 5th of April. So that's the day before the Bridges Run. We've got distances in the 5K, 10K, and the half marathon. We've got the Bridges Run, which is Sunday, the 6th of April, with distances in the 5K. And then you've got the 10K State Road Championship. And then finally, we've got Running Works Three Valleys Ultra, which is on the same day. So Sunday, the 6th of April, 2025. Distances that include the 10K, 25K, and the 50K, which you can do solo or in a team relay. All right, so let's get into some Warp admin. Got our community run this Wednesday, Chris.
Yes, we're down at the running centre this Wednesday evening. It's the 26th of March, in case you're counting. We'll be meeting there at 5:30. So Brooks will be there. They'll have a range of shoes for everyone to try on. I think we'll set off for kind of a 6.5 or a 10.5K loop, depending on what you fancy on the evening. We'll be taking off around 5:45 and then doing a lap through. We'll have a couple of pace groups for each of those distances. And then, we'll come back and have a chat afterwards. It'll be good to see everyone there. Bix will be there with their goodies as well. So no doubt.
What colour cap do you reckon Vlad will bring?
Oh, I tell you what, those that one I saw you post a picture of was pretty enticing, but I don't know how rare those are. That might be like the one of those kind of really rare Charizard Pokemons.
That's true. That's true. Because we always see the yellow caps. The yellow caps is the Pikachu, and it's pretty common, but we might see some rare Pokemon install on Wednesdays. So let's move on to our Simon Says segment, which is where we share secrets and whispers in the WA Running podcast. So I'll start things off with pretty exciting news. So we've got the Sydney Marathon coming up later this year, which is Australia's marathon major. A little birdie has told us that the Sydney Marathon has partnered with a local WA run club for a bunch of public and paced long runs in the lead up to the events. So it's going to be open to everyone. So I think some goodies at each of those long runs, and I think those long runs will start in May sometime. So we saw from a post this morning from the Albany Athletics Club that Matt Maguire's favourite event in the WA running calendar, the Elica Half Marathon, is potentially off for 2025. So that's usually held during the June long weekend, and it looks like due to the rising costs of whether it's traffic management or just putting the event together, it seems like it's a bit too much, and they've had to postpone it. So Matt Maguire does hold the course record time in a time of 1 hour 16. So you do wonder whether it's Matt's doing or whether or not he could be the one to save the Elica Half Marathon. So look, it seems like they are hoping for a 2026 edition. So I think it's, the Albany Athletics Club is just calling out for some help there, and maybe, the return of the King of Cool Jack could save the day for 2026.
Exactly. And it is a shame, I think that event's been running for 28 years, and it would be a shame to lose a regional race like that, particularly because there are probably not very many on the South Coast. There are a lot of ultras and other bits and pieces kind of throughout the year, but not everybody wants to go and run 80 kilometres up the coast. So having a road race in your local town is important, and there are people all over the state who wish to take part in these races. So hopefully they can pull it together, and hopefully the King of Cool Jack can help them get there. So that's not putting any responsibility on your shoulders at all, Matt, but
your town needs you.
Yeah.
We announced earlier that Herdys will be back in 2026, and that's scheduled for Friday, the 13th of March. Now, I hear in the grapevine that a person that's a weasel of marathons, Zane Walsh, it falls on his birthday. So Friday, the 13th of March. And rumour tells me that he's willing to risk having his balls cut off by his wife, Liz, by participating in the 2026 event. So I think, Zane, if you're listening, if you do participate in the 2026 edition on your birthday, I'm willing to put myself out there and say that I'll be in.
You're going to compete, or you're going to crew with him?
I'm going to compete.
All right, so that means I'll need to crew.
Yes.
Very good.
So the pressure's on. I'm happy to do it next year. Anyway, let's move on to our weapons of war, Chris.
Yeah, so we had a couple of runs on the 41 kilometre Heritage Trail on Saturday. So we had our fellow podcasters, Dean Menzies and Ryan Greenwood from Easy Double, running that on Saturday, and at a pace of like 3:46 a kilometre, which is just disgusting. So I don't want to see that ever again. And then, we also had Brian Bourke, a friend and listener of the show, also doing that same trail in preparation for Margaret River Ultra. So, it's a pretty reasonable effort there, guys, especially as it's getting warmer. Saturday was getting warm, and that they're obviously preparing. Dean and Ryan are preparing for Ballarat Marathon coming up, so very excited to see what damage they can do there. One of your teammates, and this seems to be a common. I've noticed this, since you've been with Team Tina, that everybody in that team seems to do stuff that's not on their plan or just exceeding Tina's orders by some considerable margins. And your friend Abud Alnatour, he ran a marathon in like 2 hours and 50 minutes or something just on a Sunday, was it?
Yeah, I think he ran that a couple of weeks ago, but he's backed it up with another marathon yesterday, or just over a marathon yesterday. Now, I'd say arguably he's following the plan, because at the moment I do know that between Ashley, Ben, and Abud, that they're probably doing about 3 hours to 3 hour 15.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
How fast you do that is up to you.
Interesting.
So technically he's following the plan, but an absolute weapon, just smashing out marathons in your training runs. So we'll see how they all pull up. It seems like they're going very well though. So
yeah, it's obviously working.
It is. So we'll see how Boston fares for those three, but they're training the house down. Even Zane's doing some crazy miles as well. So I think his long run, he was doing 41 Ks.
41 as well. Yeah.
So it's dangerous seeing all of that, because I am looking into my future as I prepare for Gold Coast. So I feel like my long run pace isn't as quick as these guys. These guys are heading out in sort of anything between 4:30s to 4:45s, and I will not be running that fast on Saturday.
Possibly sensible, Simon, though. That's good. One more thing on Dean's Heritage Trail run on the weekend. I wonder if that is a cry for help, and for him to try and escape Raf's grasp and actually join our Transcend team, because it does seem like he's really keen to run, a leg of the trails with, potentially 600 meters of elevation.
Possibly. I mean, I haven't been messaging him in this last week, but if he's really keen, I'm happy to, like, the door is always open for Dean, I reckon. Like, if he comes at the 11th hour on the Friday night before the event, I will happily kick off any team member we have. So, no, look, he's training very well. He can clearly run very fast in the hills and on the trails. So the man can do everything, and he would be a great asset to the Team Warp Transcend team, that's for sure.
Definitely.
That's it for us in this week's episode of the WA Running Podcast. Our Instagram is at WA Running Pod. Our email address is warunningpodcast@gmail.com, and our Strava group is Warp. Thank you for listening to us this week, and we'll catch you next week.
See you guys.
No wolf howl this week, hey? Forgot, yeah.